Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from 6th group. We would like to present our material about qualitative data collection. It's about observation. First, I would like to explain the definition about observations. So, what is observation? Observation is the conscious noticing and detailed examination of participants' behavior in a naturalistic setting. In applied linguistics, this can include a classroom or teacher's room or any environment where language use is being studied. Jadi observasi ini merupakan suatu penelitian yang secara sadar dan mengamati perilaku partisipan secara suasana yang natural. Jadi berjalan seperti biasanya tapi dengan adanya pengamatan. Dalam linguistik terapan, observation ini dapat berupa ruang kelas atau guru atau lingkungan manapun di mana penggunaan bahasa sedang dipelajari. And the role of observers varies widely along a continuum according to how involved they are in a research context. According to Gould, 1958 classifies observer into 4 roles corresponding to this continuum. The first is complete participant, participant as observer, observer as participant, and complete observer or non-participant observations. Jadi peran dari observer ini sangat bervariasi tergantung sejauh mana mereka terlibat dalam research konteks mereka. Dan Gould mengklasifikasikan peran dari observer ini menjadi 4 seperti yang saya tadi sebutkan. Where observer place themselves depends on the setting and the purposes of their research, and their placement may change as the study develops. Jadi peran observer ini tergantung pada pengaturan dan tujuan dari penelitian mereka seperti apa, dan penempatan mereka juga bisa berubah kalau studi yang mereka lakukan berkembang. This chapter will focus mainly on participant as observer as it is the most nuanced and complex role to play. Jadi pada bab ini akan berfokus pada pengamat, peserta sebagai pengamat, karena observer ini memiliki peran yang paling bernuansa dan kompleks untuk dimainkan. Participant observation is the key data collection method used in ethnography, which itself has a long history in anthropology and sociology. Jadi, participant observation ini suatu metode pengumpulan data yang utama yang digunakan dalam etnografi. Etnografi ini suatu research method yang datang dari berbagai disiplin ilmu seperti antropologi dan sosiologi. Jadi di mana lebih mengamati tentang culture asli dari partisipan. And the participant does not have to mean taking a full part in whatever activity is going on. Rather, it means interacting with people while they are carrying out their normal tasks such as teaching or studying. Jadi dalam participant observation ini pengamatan partisipan ini mereka itu tidak selalu harus menjadi observer sepenuhnya, tetapi mereka juga harus berinteraksi dengan orang-orang saat mereka melakukan tugas normal mereka, misalnya mengajar atau belajar. Misalnya guru sedang mengamati siswa, jadi guru itu tidak mengajar, tidak seperti itu. Jadi guru itu mengamati, tapi mereka juga harus berinteraksi dengan siswa agar mendapatkan data yang lebih jelas gitu. And while experiencing what is going on in a research site, researchers need to observe this and make detailed notes called field notes about the place, the people, and the interaction that occur. Jadi dalam pengamatan ini ada yang disebut dengan field notes. Field notes ini tentang mencatat bagaimana hasil interaksi kita terhadap partisipan kita. Seperti kita membuat field notes tentang tempat, orang, atau interaksi yang terjadi pada saat kita melakukan observasi dengan partisipan. This note taking is a difficult skill to learn to do well. Karena field note ini merupakan keterampilan yang sulit untuk dilakukan dengan baik. Jadi kita harus benar-benar cermat dalam mengambil field notes ini. And the next is why use observation in applied linguistic research. There are three main reasons why observation is applied in linguistic research. The first is, according to Anderson, Hare, and Nihlen, observation can help uncover this familiar and fixed aspect of education and help demystify what is actually going on as opposed to what one might hope or assume is happening. Jadi observation ini dapat membantu memperbaiki aspek-aspek dalam pendidikan, seperti misalnya guru mengasumsikan apa ya yang akan terjadi bila saya mengajarkan ini misalnya. Nah, daripada mengasumsikan hal yang belum pasti terjadi, nah lebih baik melakukan observasi, karena dari observasi ini guru juga akan tahu apa yang sebenarnya terjadi daripada mengasumsikan apa yang akan terjadi. And then observation can help researchers literally look at what is going on around them and give them important insight into the external aspect of language learning. Jadi observation ini juga dapat membantu para peneliti benar-benar melihat apa yang terjadi di sekitar mereka dan dapat memberikan mereka wawasan yang penting itu ke dalam penelitian mereka. And the second reason is observation is often used in tandem with other methods of data collection to triangulate or provide additional evidence for a research study. Observation is particularly useful in action research where teachers frequently work collaboratively to better understand their teaching situations. Jadi alasan yang kedua itu karena observasi ini sering digunakan dengan bersama-sama dengan metode pengumpulan data lainnya untuk melakukan triangulasi atau memberikan bukti tambahan untuk studi penelitian. Jadi observasi ini dapat menambahkan bukti gitu yang lebih jelas pada suatu studi penelitian. Nah, observasi ini juga sangat berguna dalam penelitian tindakan atau action research, di mana kan guru sering meneliti secara berkolaborasi dengan yang lain gitu, bagaimana pengajaran mereka atau situasi pengajaran mereka. And the third is the practice of language teaching and that of research have much in common, but try to make sense of complex situation, and in both teachers and researchers are continually observing their environment. Hitchcock and Hodges 1995. Jadi praktek pengajaran bahasa dan penelitian ini memiliki banyak kesamaan. Jadi keduanya itu mencoba untuk memahami suatu situasi atau situasi yang kompleks gitu, misalnya guru memahami suatu keadaan di kelas gitu, dan dengan siswanya seperti apa. Dan in some ways as a language teacher they participate in observation, especially participate observation all the time, so it is a particularly appropriate method for research in or about the classroom. Jadi dalam beberapa hal ketika guru bahasa mengajar, mereka berpartisipasi dalam observasi kan. Khususnya kalau misalnya pengamatan partisipan sepanjang waktu. Jadi observasi ini tuh benar-benar bermanfaat gitu buat guru dalam memahami pembelajaran di kelas mereka seperti apa gitu. Jadi dapat memberikan juga bukti yang kuat, bukti tambahan, dan juga dapat melihat apa yang sebenarnya terjadi dengan partisipan. Jadi dilihat dengan data yang lebih jelas. Thank you. That's all for me.
Now let's move to talk about key feature for observation. Key feature for observation divided into 4 sections. They are setting, system, people, and behavior. The first one is setting. Setting divided into 2 elements. They are space and object. Nah, untuk tujuan sebuah pengamatan, kita perlu melihat secara dekat the aspect of this, as it bears on other features such as relationship and status. There are 2 features that can be considered separately, even though they are connected. The first one is space. It's a good idea if you're choosing setting and use this as a basis for exploring the relationship between action and setting. Jadi dalam space ini gunanya untuk menggambarkan sketsa untuk sebuah observasi, untuk mengeksplorasi hubungan antara action dan setting. Jadi kita sebelum melakukan observasi itu kita harus membuat sketsanya terlebih dahulu akan seperti apa observasi yang akan kita lakukan itu, supaya kita dapat datanya sesuai dengan apa yang kita sedang observasi dan sesuai dengan topik kita. Jadi harus ada space atau ruangnya dulu, jangan sampai nggak teratur. Karena kalau nggak teratur nanti hasil datanya nggak sesuai sama apa yang sedang kita teliti, seperti itu. Dalam space ini kita dapat mengajukan beberapa pertanyaan. Pertanyaannya itu sesuai dengan apa yang akan kita teliti, topik apa yang kita teliti. Nah di sini ada pertanyaan tentang distribusi wilayah dan juga kegiatan, such as what space is available and how is it distributed. Nah, it is the example of question distribution. And then for activities, which space encourage particular activities and which space discourage them. How do people make use of the setting in their everyday activities? Nah, itu untuk contoh pertanyaan-pertanyaannya. Yang kedua ada objek. Nah, pertanyaan juga dapat ditanyakan tentang sebuah objek. Ownership of or access to particular object might be a sign of status. Certain object might be associated with particular activities and so on. Pertanyaan juga dapat ditanyakan tentang sebuah objek atau bisa juga terkait dengan suatu aktivitas-aktivitas tertentu. Seperti itu. Kemudian key features yang kedua itu ada sistem. Sistem divided into formal and informal. Sistem itu baik formal maupun informal bersifat eksplisit dan dapat ditangani dengan cukup mudah. It's also worth distinguishing formal system which participants are constrained to follow, although how they follow them is interesting in itself, from informal system that are socially but not formally binding. What I have in mind here is the difference between a formal system for recording materials and an informal system for making sure that such materials are distributed fairly. Seperti itu untuk sistem. Jadi sistem dibagi menjadi dua, ada formal dan juga ada informal. Kemudian key features yang ketiga itu ada people. People divided into 4 elements. They are actor, relationship, interaction, and feelings. Yang pertama ada actor. It seems like two participant yang sedang kita observe. Jadi siapa sih partisipannya gitu? Who are the actors? What are their names? How are they addressed? What do you know of their history? How do they present themselves? Pokoknya ini seputar tentang partisipan atau aktor yang sedang kita teliti. Yang kedua ada relationships. Penting juga untuk menjabarkan yang satu ini. Setelah kita tahu aktornya itu siapa, kemudian kita ke relationship-nya. Ada beberapa pertanyaan yang bisa kita cari tahu pada saat kita mengobservasi ini. Misalnya partisipan kita tuh sebuah grup, bukan satu orang tapi berupa grup, seperti itu. Nah, pertanyaannya such as what are the groups? How do they relate to one another? Are there hierarchies? How do people move from one group to another? How are relationship defined? Nah, itu untuk pertanyaan yang bisa kita ajukan berhubungan tentang relationship, seperti itu. Yang ketiga ada interactions. The relationship between this and the former category is an intimate one. Karena melalui interaksilah hubungan tersebut dapat dibangun dan dapat juga dikembangkan. It is possible to capture interaction in field notes, but there are obvious advantages in using recorded data, which may reflect subtle alignment not immediately apparent to the observer. Seperti itu. Yang keempat tuh ada feelings. Elemen yang terakhir tuh yaitu feelings. Jelas, the observer tidak memiliki akses secara langsung untuk ke elemen ini, ke elemen yang satu ini. But it is important to record actors' feeling as manifested in their behavior or tone. Seperti itu. Selanjutnya, key features yang keempat ada behavior. Nah, behavior divided into 4 elements. They are times, routines, process, and events. Behavior is something that need to be observed carefully dan uraiannya tidak langsung dan pasti. but there are particular aspects that can guide observation. The first one is times. Noting the timing of activities is very important. Times provide a convenient set of coordinates for locating activities. Nah, begitupun pada saat kita sedang melakukan sebuah observasi, tentu kita harus mencatat segala hal yang berkaitan dengan waktu. Contohnya, dalam melakukan sebuah observasi yang berkelanjutan atau yang tidak sekali langsung beres, pasti ada proses dan progresnya. Misalnya, kita mengobservasi partisipan kita pada pertemuan pertama, dia masih biasa aja. Kemudian kita mengobserv yang kedua kalinya, ternyata ada sedikit perubahan. Lalu kita mengobservasi yang ketiga kalinya, itu nanti akan lebih terlihat lagi progres dia tuh seperti apa dan sejauh mana. Jadi, noting the timing of activities itu sangat penting untuk mengetahui progres dari apa yang sedang kita teliti. Seperti itu. Jadi, terus yang kedua ada routines. Routines provide a useful way of orienting to behavior a particular setting. It can be very instructive to identify such routines in order to discover what they represent. And if routines are broken, the result can provide valuable insight into relationship, shared understanding, and social organization. Nah, mengarahkan perilaku ke dalam pengaturan tertentu. Jadi, maksudnya mungkin kita mengarahkan partisipan yang sedang kita observe itu ke dalam pengaturan tertentu. Maksud dari pengaturan tertentu di sini adalah pengaturan yang telah kita buat supaya align atau sesuai dengan apa yang kita ingin dapatkan sesuai dengan konteks penelitian kita. Seperti itu. Yang ketiga ada proses. It can be useful. Ini dapat bermanfaat to note what process, interactional, professional, and so on need to be gone through in order to achieve certain goals. And it may be possible to identify common process or shared characteristic of different process. Nah, itu untuk prosesnya. Dan yang terakhir, elemen yang terakhir itu ada selanjutnya ada events. Spreadly 1980 distinguish acts or single actions, activities or sets of related acts, and events or sets of related activities. It can be very helpful to identify specific events and the characteristic of this. Jadi ini akan sangat membantu sekali untuk mengidentifikasi secara spesifik peristiwa dan karakteristiknya ini. Because this may make it easier to distinguish patterns and norms. I don't think it matters too much how you choose to identify events, so long as you develop a fairly consistent approach to this. Thank you.
Okay, the next is about strategies for observing. There are particular strategies for observing. It is divided into general strategies and orienting strategies. In general strategies, Walcott recommends for strategies for ethnographic observations. The first strategy is observe and record everything. Walcott recommends this as a useful starting point and argues that it leads to two useful relations. First, because you can't observe everything, you are likely to be struck by the evidence of what you do actually record. And second, this selection can provide valuable clues to your own observing habits. You may find that you need to expand your gaze, that you focus on some things at the expense of others, and so on. A sense of place is very important to get a good feel for the setting before turning the attention to what's happening there. It can also be interesting to compare impressions at the beginning of the gathering with those occurring when the setting has become a familiar one. And next, strategy 2, observe and look for nothing, that is nothing in particular. This strategy can be particularly valuable in very complex situations where too much is happening for the observer at once or excessively familiar ones. And the third strategy is look for paradoxes. This strategy offers a means of focusing of observation and can be particularly useful in educational contexts where paradoxes and contradictions are common. Walcott quotes the example of the paradox between the frequently heard opinion that is hard to get teachers to try new things and the teacher expressed belief that teachers have insufficient opportunity to solve what they already are capable of doing. And the last strategy is identify the key problem confronting a group. Walcott suggests that sometimes a group is presented with a particular problem, and that this can provide a useful focus for observations. And then in orienting strategies, in addition to these general strategies, there are also particular means of orienting in a new way to what is observed. Whether or not these particular strategies are used will depend on the situations, but it's certainly worth knowing about them. Here are three that you might find useful. The first is what if. As observers, we invest all our attention in what is happening. But it can sometimes be valuable to stand back and ask hypothetical questions. Loveland provide a list of possible questions that includes examples such as the following: why doesn't X happen? What would happen if X happened? And then maps. White mentioned watching and noting in map form the movements of the people in the club he was observing. He built up a large collecting of such maps, and the information they provided enabled him to form a clear picture of the relationship between movement and interaction, so that eventually when an issue arose, he could predict who would stand where. And next, the last is thought leader. White was based on distinction between prior events involving two people and set events involving three or more. In the latter, the person who initiates change in interaction is the leader, and over time a stable pattern emerges that the researchers can use to work out groupings and their ranking structure. And in ethics, some academic communities have ethical committees that help in the decision making process, but there is no sense of earth that takes away the personal responsibility each of us carries. There are several ethics when observing. The first is consent. The researcher's responsibility to decide or discover where consent for entry, observation, action, and so on. This required and to ensure that it properly obtained from all concerned parties of the basis of honest representations. The ethical issues here is centered on the relevance and limits of consent and on representations. When is consent needed? How far does it extend? Has it been freely given, or was there an element of coercions. And second, honesty. A condition of informed consent is honest representations, but no representations is ever complete. So how much is enough, and who should be told what? If the information given compromises the research, then the project has failed before it begins. But how far should the researcher be prepared to reveal their aims? The ethical issue here is the fine dividing line between limited descriptions and deliberate deceptions. And next is privacy. It's important for the researcher to keep these things in mind and not to assume that the matter of privacy is closed once permission is obtained. And then ownership, the degree of control, for example, with regard to editing, restrictions on access and release, to be exercised by those involved in the research needs to be carefully considered and negotiated. There are no guidelines on acceptable procedures here, but all decisions should be based on respect for the other parties involved and recognition of the importance of their voice. And finally is harm. The researchers should always be aware of this and carefully not to be the inadvertent cause of harm to others. There is a sense in which research is not a neutrality, at least in as much as the researcher was to make strange the events that occur and the outcomes, which cast penetrating light on ordinary events, have the power to hurt. So the researchers need to be aware of this. Thank you.
The next topic is about collecting the data. How we collect the data using qualitative data collection method, that is observation. Jadi ada beberapa cara yang bisa dilakukan untuk mengumpulkan data dengan menggunakan metode observasi. Bisa dengan melakukan audio recording, video, dan juga field notes. Nah, pada kali ini we will only focus on field notes. Kemudian ada 3 langkah yang bisa dilakukan dalam melakukan observasi. Yang pertama yaitu preparing for observation, dan yang kedua observing, yang ketiga making field notes. Yang pertama yaitu preparing for observation. Preparing for observations juga terbagi lagi menjadi 2 poin utama yang biasa dilakukan oleh peneliti dalam melakukan observasi, dalam mempersiapkan observasi. Yang pertama yaitu ada entering the field, dan yang kedua ada foreshadow problems. Yang pertama, entering the field. Dalam hal ini artinya kita harus mendapatkan izin akses untuk meneliti objek atau untuk melakukan penelitian itu sendiri. Nah, dalam hal ini jangan sampai objek yang sedang kita teliti itu merasa terganggu. Jangan sampai mereka berpikir mereka sedang dimata-matai daripada mereka sedang melakukan aktivitas akademik begitu. Kemudian yang kedua ada foreshadow problems. Foreshadow problems ini berarti kita merencanakan masalah apa yang akan diobservasi di lapangan agar waktu yang tersedia tidak terbuang sia-sia begitu. Patterns 2002 mentioned that traditional participant observation can last at least 6 months and even years. However, a master's thesis will be considerably shorter. Jadi yang terpenting yaitu ketersediaan waktu. Jadi kita harus memanfaatkan waktu yang tersedia. Maka dari itu sangat penting untuk merencanakan masalah apa yang nantinya akan diobservasi. Namun juga jangan terlalu fokus pada perencanaan masalah tersebut, karena di lapangan bisa jadi ada informasi-informasi yang lebih valuable yang juga menarik. Begitu, seperti contoh di sini Aya itu akan meneliti rekan kerjanya, namun ternyata dia tidak begitu tertarik untuk meneliti rekan kerjanya tersebut. Dia lebih tertarik untuk meneliti murid-murid dari rekan kerjanya tersebut. Yang kedua yaitu observing atau tahap dalam melakukan observasinya. Peneliti harus sadar akan apapun hal yang terjadi di lingkungan sekitar. Yang pertama, thick description. Yang kedua ada making the familiar strange. Nah, dengan mempunyai awareness atau kesadaran, dengan begitu akan dengan mudah untuk mendeskripsikan hal-hal apa yang terjadi di sekitar. Nah, ini termasuk ke dalam thick descriptions, di mana kita harus menulis hal-hal secara detail, sedetail mungkin yang terjadi di lapangan sekitar. Seperti contoh, ketika berada di sebuah taman, kita harus membayangkan atau menceritakan bagaimana rasanya duduk di bangku taman ketika cuaca sedang sejuk mungkin atau sedang hujan, lalu ada berapa banyak pohon di sana dan apa jenis pohon tersebut. Nah, barulah kita mengobservasi orang-orang yang ada di taman tersebut, apa yang mereka lakukan, apa yang mereka bicarakan, seperti itu. Yang kedua ada making the familiar strange. Jadi dalam hal ini kita harus bersikap seolah-olah situasi tersebut dan semua hal yang terjadi di lingkungan itu merupakan hal yang baru untuk kita. Seperti contoh di sini Aya mencoba untuk melihat lingkungan kelasnya itu sebagai hal yang baru atau yang memang belum Aya ketahui sebelumnya. Dengan begitu Aya bisa dari sana bisa menimbulkan beberapa pertanyaan seperti why are students putting on makeup, why don't they open the textbook. Nah, jadi kita itu tidak boleh atau harus menghindari hal-hal taken for granted. Jadi bukan, ya memang itu sudah seharusnya terjadi. Misalnya kenapa ya siswa itu tertidur di kelas? Oh ya, mungkin memang siswa memang suka tidur di kelas. Nah, dengan menempatkan siswa tidur di kelas itu merupakan sebuah hal yang baru untuk kita, maka akan timbul pertanyaan, oh iya ya, kenapa ya siswa itu bisa tidur di kelas? Nah, itu sama halnya terjadi pada Aya. Kenapa misalnya siswa itu memakai make up atau tidak membuka textbook mereka gitu. Itu tadi step atau langkah yang kedua, yaitu observing. Sekarang langkah yang ketiga yaitu making field notes, membuat catatan. Di sini akan dijelaskan dua hal, yaitu how to take notes dan what to take notes. Jadi bagaimana cara mengambil atau cara menulis catatan dan catatan apa saja yang harus dicatat, hal-hal apa saja yang harus dicatat. Yang pertama, how to take notes atau bagaimana caranya membuat catatan. Dalam membuat catatan, setiap orang bisa saja berbeda karena ini merupakan personal task. Namun sebagai seorang pemula atau untuk seorang pemula bisa membuat catatan dengan membuat 3 kolom. Kolom yang pertama yaitu left hand column yang berisi details tentang tempat dan waktu kapan observasi itu dilakukan misalnya. Kemudian yang kedua yaitu ada middle column, ya kolom yang berada di tengah-tengah. Nah, itu berisi tentang catatannya. Kemudian ada kolom yang berisi tentang analytical memos and comments, tentang hal-hal yang terjadi di lapangan gitu. Dalam membuat catatan biasanya juga menggunakan simbol atau singkatan yang bisa dimengerti oleh peneliti tersebut gitu. Kemudian yang kedua ada what to take notes. Jadi catatan apa saja yang harus dicatat. Setelah dijelaskan dimensions of observation atau 9 kategori yang ada di observasi. Nah, 9 kategori tersebut bisa dijadikan acuan untuk menulis hal-hal apa saja yang harus dicatat. Namun tidak apa-apa jika tidak semua hal harus dicatat karena beberapa kategori tidak termasuk atau tidak sesuai dengan apa yang terjadi di lapangan seperti itu. 9 dimensions atau kategori ini dicatat di bagian kolom yang di tengah tadi, di middle kolom. Jadi hal apa saja yang memang harus dicatat. Nah, di bawah di analytical memos atau comments juga bisa ditulis karena itu bisa membantu hal apa saja yang mungkin akan dilakukan di tahap observasi berikutnya. Seperti contoh, di sini Ayah menggunakan spread list model yang 9 kategori atau dimensions tadi. Di sini Ayah fokus pada bagaimana student behavior varies according to task type. Itulah 3 langkah yang bisa dilakukan untuk mengumpulkan data dengan menggunakan metode observasi. Yang pertama tadi ada preparing for observations, di mana ada 2 poin utama yang bisa dilakukan, yaitu entering the field dan foreshadow problems. Kemudian yang langkah selanjutnya yaitu observing, di mana kita harus melakukan deskripsi atau mendeskripsikan hal-hal sedetail mungkin, dan juga memposisikan diri kita sebagai orang asing di situasi tersebut, melihat hal yang terjadi di situasi atau di lingkungan itu sebagai hal yang baru ditemukan begitu. Kemudian langkah yang ketiga, yang terakhir barusan itu ada making field notes. Jadi bagaimana caranya membuat field notes, yaitu dengan menggunakan 3 kolom tadi, dan apa saja yang harus ada di dalam catatan tersebut, yaitu dengan melihat 9 dimension atau 9 kategori sebagai acuan. The next topic is organizing and interpreting data. Nah, setelah mengumpulkan data, barulah data tersebut disusun dan kemudian diinterpretasikan. Yang pertama yaitu diorganisasikan, disusun atau diorganizing, dengan menuliskan informasi-informasi yang ada di field notes tadi, bisa dengan ditulis di logbook atau di buku jurnal. Nah, kemudian ada interpreting data. Dalam menginterpretasikan data, jadi harus ada teori dan analytical frameworks-nya. Seperti contoh di sini, Ayah menggunakan notebooks untuk membuat field notes-nya dalam mengumpulkan field notes yang 3 kolom itu. Nah, Ayah itu menggunakan notebooks atau yang tadi disebutkan bisa juga menggunakan logbook atau buku jurnal. Kemudian Ayah menggunakan software yang bernama NVivo untuk menuliskan komentar-komentar atau ide-idenya yang terdapat di analytical comments di kolom yang paling bawah tadi. Kemudian Ayah mengobservasi student confidence in carrying out learning tasks, di mana student behavior ini linked with psychological theories of self-esteem. Thank you.
So we come to the examples of collecting data through observations. So the observation activities proposed below need not be part of any larger project, so any notes you make need to be seen only by you and can be destroyed when they have served their purpose. If this is the case, permission not be an issue, provided that the observation is discrete, based on Richard 2003. So here are some examples of how to collecting data to observations. The first one is just looking. For example, like look out of your window at the street. So the explanation is pick a convenient setting, like look out of the window and then see the street, observe what's happening in your staff room, your living room, the bus, the train, anything you can observe it as long as you possibly can, aiming for between half an hour and an hour if you can manage it. Don't take notes, just purely observed. Just fix your attention on the scene in front of you and try to build up a clear picture of what is happening. And then when you've done that, sit back and reflect on your experience. Jotting down notes of your field that helps, then read on. And then this activity or these observations have some of problems, or of course there are strength and then weakness of something, and then the problem of this observation through just looking, like purely looking, is that attention has to do with that what you observe. Your first experience observation in the text above was probably a sense of confusion of what to look for, and then the word observation itself has built into it the idea of purposeful looking. So it doesn't really make sense just to sit down and look. You want to know what to look for. So all effective observation could perhaps be described as the continual refinement of this issue to focus, which cannot be resolved simply by fixing on one particular object at the expense of others. The danger in looking for something particular is that you may be able to find it only at the cost of ignoring what is genuinely interesting. One experience teaches researchers of ignoring what is genuinely interesting that comments on the value of observation direct attention to the importance of an open mind and an eye for the unexpected. So you have to remember that when you are looking, sometimes we feel like, oh, that's the object that I'm interested in, so I don't care about the other objects. So this is what the weaknesses of just looking. So you have to consider about that. So the second one is a sense of place. So this is how you observe through a sense of place. So it is about the setting, because we cannot observe without knowing what is happening in the place. So is the place fitting with my research? So we have to consider about something like this. So the book said that sometimes I get tired of the way my neighborhood supermarket keeps shifting the location of its foodstuffs, but I understand that the manager has a job to do. So this is, if you'd like to work on developing your observation skills through a sense of place, it will be worth deciding no on a setting that will be the focus of your work. So you have to consider about the setting of your place, or the setting of your place that you are working on. And then once you've settled on a place, you'll be able to experience a gradually deepening understanding of what happens there as your observation skill develop. Just a couple of simple observational activities should open your eyes to things you have so far taken for granted. Though to get a full sense of what is possible, you need to follow up your work here with the activities suggest. If you decide to do that, the setting won't change. So your decision here is important one. So you have to choose. So because you are the only one who know what setting that is really fit with your research. So you have to consider about that before starting your observations, of course. Because if you are just do it away without considering these things, then your result will be or there will be a fallacy of your research later on. So another example or another way to observe is the inhabitants. So the word inhabitants, especially in this book. So for the example, the inhabitants, like from the book of Richards, say that in the inhabitants, it means that, to take an example with which you will be familiar, a teacher walks into a classroom and seeing that the desks are arranged in rows facing the front, asks for them to be rearranged in clusters or in a circle. So I concluded inhabitants means like a physical setting that you would like to arrange it for your observations, for your research. So it is important, I told you, that the movements or the arrangement of the setting in your observations will influence your data later on. And then we come to the next example is note taking. Note-taking, that as we already know that the way we approach is influenced to some extent by our view of what observation involves. To illustrate that, I begin with the position very different from the one I subsequently go on to develop in the section of procedures for observations. Says that Gerbich 1999 says that the researcher acts largely as a camera, scanning and recording detail wherever she or he happens to be focusing, while also recording sounds and spoken language from a broader range. So I just make it simple that note-taking means that you observe it through a camera or through a recording that you are taking a note, like what the previous presentation of me about classroom analysis, which already explained that when you are observing something to your students and then through using a camera, it means that there are something that really important and you can take in a note. After that, you can analyze it. That's what is the important thing for note taking in your observations. So I think note taking can be you can use note taking like every example of observation. For example, like the just looking, and then a sense of place, and then we come to inhabitants. You can take a note from that, because note taking means like you take what is important thing in your observations, and that is not, there's nothing wrong with that. And then, so there is an example of one of the observations done by the author of this book. So I will tell about the setting first. On his way from a recent visit to Japan, I was sitting in Narita airport thinking about this book, and it occurred to me that the best way of illustrating how you could fit observation into all sorts of situations would be to do just that. So if you think you will want to do is observation, so just look around and then just do it, and don't forget to note taking. I therefore looked around and spotted a group sitting nearby whose conversation I could not hear. What conclusions do you draw about their interactions from reading the skeleton description? So I already add the picture of Narita Airport 10 p.m. to the slide, and then you can see the setting here. Coffee area in Narita Airport, departure long, low table, comfortable chairs, plenty of spaces. So you can see here there are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So the people or the person in these tables are only initial names, because we cannot put their name for the observations. And then the participants, a Japanese young adults for like 20 years old, and then all female except for one, age, all sitting on own seats except B, who is perched on the arm of these chairs. So we can see here B and D are talking each other, but the other participants are sitting alone. And then the events, C films throughout, moving the camera around the table, sometimes focusing on speakers, sometimes on listener. So the first one is A, talks, all orient to the talk. B's ice cream spoon remains suspended, empty between mouth and top. Number 2, A stops talking, B resumes eating, D talks, E and F and G and H hold separate conversation, A and B orient to D, B continues eating. You can see to the pictures here that B and D are talking each other. So H and E talk across the table. B stops eating, all listen. A leans forward, nods repeatedly as talk continues. Occasionally, participants orient briefly to A. So the author is really observing them. How they work, how they talk, how they move, how they eat, even how they sit, and then she does. And then the author said that you might have noticed a number of things about this, but for me, or for the author, what is interesting is the role that A plays. I don't know what they were saying, and I don't know if A is the leader of the group. It's more likely that her role here has something to do with the topic and her ownership of it. But it seems clear that she is dominant figure in these exchanges. She is the only one who holds the floor on her own, and when she does, everyone listens to her. In fact, B even stopped eating her ice cream. So A is really dominant in these groups. When D talks, she does hold the floor. A and B pay attention to her. But two other conversations have started up and continue as the talks. Eventually, two of the other interactions engage in talk across the table, which once again becomes the focus of the group's attentions. Even so, A feels able to learn forward into the central space that represents the shared floor and to nod in response to the talk. So again, A feels like really important here in the group, or might be he or she is the leader of this group. This sort of behavior acknowledges and encourages the talk, but it also represents A's investment in the talk, almost in a proprietorial sense, given the way that other listeners orient to be responses as well as the talk itself. This doesn't seem an unreasonable assumption, though it remains to more than assumption. I admit that this is hardly an exciting episode, but it was an entertaining way to pass the time while also honing my observational skill. I recommend it as an airport activity. So you can do observation like any place, but you have to consider the setting. You have to consider that the setting is fit with your research. So this one of the examples is the simple example of how the author given an observation about surroundings, about his or her environments. So I think that's all. Thank you.